Well, my name is Matt Templeton. I've been in the real estate industry since I was 15. I started as an assistant at a brokerage. Luckily, I had a friend in high school whose dad had a real estate brokerage, and he said, "Will you come like clean for us and maybe do some online searches and check the fax machine and do schedule some showings?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'd love another side job." And so I started a real estate office, and then I watched all the real estate agents. We had a bunch of top producers, and I remember thinking like, "Oh, I can do this. Like these guys don't even know what they're doing. Like they're making all this money and they're not even very good at it." Well, come to find out, it was actually a little bit more challenging than I thought. But I got my license at 18 and I started figuring out how to do it. I didn't sell anything for 9 months. So I was like a lot of people where you're like, I thought this was going to be so easy, right? I thought that it was going to be just like walk in the park, look at there's cashing $27,000 checks. It must be like how real estate is all the time. And so I was a little bit humbled those first 9 months. And then the subsequent 3 months, because I finally figured out that the name of the game was having conversations, identifying leads, doing the activities that aren't very fun. I sold 11 houses in those following 3 months. So it ended up working out for me. But sometimes we give up too soon, right? We give up because we're not sticking with it long enough before we see the results. But I also think sometimes we get into these things and then we have the wrong purpose behind it. Like we have the wrong reason for it. And for me, it was like, I want to make a bunch of money. I want to be like all those other people that seem to be not working hardly at all and making big checks. And that's not a good reason to get into real estate, right? And if that's the purpose behind it, then you're probably going to fail, or at least you're going to struggle for a while you try to chase something that's not founded in purpose. Now, I remember like early on in my career, maybe it was like the third or fourth year, someone said like, "Well, what's your why?" So this is maybe the first gut check in the process of like, why are you actually doing this, right? Because sometimes we can still have some success despite maybe making it about the money. And so I got a little bit more reformed in my purpose. And I said, okay, well, my why is I really want to be able to have some passive income so that I can have a big family. And at that point, I didn't have kids. I was in my 20s, right? I'm young 20s. I'm finishing a bachelor's degree. But I know that I want to have a family. And so I'm like, I'm going to develop some passive income because if I want to have a big family, I want to be able to afford it. And I don't want to have to be slogging later on in life when I want to have kids or I want to have a family. Or maybe you feel that, right? Like you're feeling this pressure of, I want to spend more time with my family. And I feel like I'm getting burnout trying to keep all my transactions together. I feel like I'm trying to just spin the wheels, keeping all this going, but my family needs me more, right? And so that was my first venture into like, what's my why? Well, my why would be a future family that I would need to have some passive income for, but it's still based on the income. It's still about how do I have enough money? How do I make money so that I can have an easier life? And so then I ended up taking a job in Dallas. I moved from Albuquerque to Dallas. My first real estate team was in Albuquerque. We still have operations there. And I moved to Dallas to take on a market center. At that point, the Urban Dallas Market Center was just about the ugliest Keller Williams Market Center in the system. And the reason I say that is because we didn't have very many agents left, right? Like we deteriorated. And so the list said that we had 200 agents and we actually only had 70. And the copiers were all broken and they were kicking us out of our space. And it was just a painful situation. But Smokey Garrett said, "Hey, Matt, if you take on the ugliest thing that we've got, then, you can create some opportunity for yourself." And I'm young and think, sure, why not? So I moved to Dallas and I take on the team leader role. And we grew that office from 70 agents to 300 agents over the course of 5 years and kind of turned it around. And now we're actually moving into our next space. We've been there in the space we moved into for 7 years, moving into our new space in 2 months. So I guess technically I've been at Urban Dallas now for 7 or 8 years. All that to say, I started to discover a little bit more of a purpose there. And I realized that it's not just about being able to create. It wasn't just about creating passive income for me. It was about providing for other relationships. And it was about unlocking opportunity for other relationships, like unlocking freedom. And so I started to say, well, my why is freedom for me. At first I thought, well, freedom for me, freedom of choice, freedom of money, freedom of opportunity. Like, what do I want to be able? I want to be able to say yes to the things I want to say yes to and not have to feel obligated to something I don't want to say yes to. But as that started to develop, I realized it really was more about freedom for other people. How do we unlock freedom for others? How do we help them to get more opportunity? How do we help them get more stability? How does their life start to flourish? And that might come in the form of team members. That might come in the form of an assistant or people that are working for you. It might come in the form of your family members. Like, how do I pour into my kids or my spouse or my siblings or my parents so that I can help them have more freedom? And what I realized in that journey was that money is not the object. Many times we make that the thing that we're trying to pursue. And money's not that. Money is just a tool. It's a conduit that serves the relationships. But sometimes the money becomes such a god, such an idol for us, that it actually does the very thing that it does the very opposite of the thing that it should be doing. It destroys the relationships. It causes us to sacrifice the relationships because we got to go pursue more money. We got to hit the next tier. We've got to have a certain accomplishment that makes us feel good. But the money all along was meant to just serve the relationships. We were supposed to deepen the relationships and let the money flow into the places where it needs to serve the people. So the thing that I say now is like, well, I've been on this 10-year journey of unlocking what is my, or understanding what is my why. And it really is about unlocking freedom for others and helping people to either change their trajectory or discover where they're going. And so what I would say to you, or what I would ask you, is like, maybe you've been on this journey, maybe you've had a why, and sometimes it's a small why, like that gets you through the week or the month or the year. Like, I'm taking my kids to Disneyland, or I'm going to pay off my student loans, or I'm going to get this thing for my family. I need to get a new car. I need to get a new house. I need to get something, right? So those are great whys. And then when you start to expand it, you realize there's more opportunity. Oh, what I really wanted there was I wanted to create an amazing experience for my kids. Or what I really wanted there was I wanted to have a life of excitement and beauty. And I want more excitement and beauty in my life. And so maybe you start to think about, as I'm still on this journey, what's the expanding version of that why? And early on, when someone asks you the question, like, what is your why? I think it's really hard to, I didn't have an answer. I mean, my why was like, I want to make money. Then it was, I want to make passive income for a family. Then it was, I want to have more freedom. Then it was, I want to have freedom I want to pass freedom on to others. Right. So you can see how it starts to expand beyond like what those selfish intents were. Someone the other day told me a great quote, and I'm still chewing on it. And they said, maturity is marked by greater selflessness. Maturity is marked by greater selflessness. And they actually said the opposite too. They said immaturity is marked by greater and greater selfishness. And so as we think about like, what are we doing here? Now, I think that we need to grind, we need to push, we need to be able to have success in our business. And oftentimes our lack of success is probably because of a lack of focus or a lack of discipline. But to some degree, we have to decide when is enough enough. And then my energy needs to be pouring into relationships. I need to be investing in people. I need to be using the excess money I've created to love on my neighbors, to love on my family, to love on other agents, to love on people in my community. And I think that's where we're headed in purpose. Like if I had to ask, like, if somebody asked me like, what's the purpose of life, or what is the purpose of everything we're doing here? I would say, well, there is one generic purpose that we all have. And that is to seek and find a relationship with our creator so that we can understand our purpose. Because we do have a specific purpose, but the generic purpose is seek and find the relationship with our creator. And then second is to connect with and have a relationship with others. That's why the greatest commandment is love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself, the second commandment, right? So it's really, if we boil that all down, our purpose of life is relationship, is love. It's love with creator and from creator, and it's love with others next to us, right? The relationships around us. So as you're thinking about your why, and as you're maybe going on the journey of expanding and understanding what it is, just don't forget, it's not about the money. It's about what the money can do. And it's about the service for others that's about. Does that make sense?
It's so powerful, and it's touching to me, because I think ultimately that's where even this gathering here was grown out of a challenge by our team leader, who you know. And initially it was called Give Where You Live, which for me was about community and outreach. And it was my effort on philanthropy, because I feel like I've been so blessed. And I feel like I give not just my money, but my time in other areas. And that's where this whole group started from. And you'll notice that the password to get in is Give 2021, right? That's where it started. And for there's a few people on here that, Matt, that they don't have the experience that we have, or that Steve has. You said something early on that I don't want folks to miss. It took you 9 months before you basically got your first opportunity. And it was 8 or 9 months for me also. And my son's not on here today because he's in class. And I think it's important for young kids to hear that this didn't happen immediately. It wasn't an overnight success, right? You grind, you grind, you grind, you learn, you learn, you learn, and then you remove the L. Then you start to earn. And so thanks for sharing that. And I appreciate the community here that's loyal. And I think that, again, we're all in it together. And I think when you mature a little bit, I've now discovered that my big why is about legacy now. Because like you, it was about money and all the flexibility and freedom. And I knew that I bet on me back in like 1989 when I got in this business. And it was the best roll of the dice that I've ever done. And now it's about going from success to significance. We hear that at Keller Williams all the time. So thank you for sharing that. Don't let me interrupt your rhythm. So what else you got for it?
That was so good. So now there is an aspect where we dial back, because I think sometimes we get too into, like, I love talking about why. I love talking about purpose. And the last thing I'll share with you is just a little bit of a practical. So what does that look like? How do we roll this out? Well, if we think about like levels, like, okay, we got this overarching purpose. We've got the reason why we're here. Maybe we go look at our 3 to 5 year vision and we try to identify like what that's going to look like. And then we start setting some yearly goals, and then we get into the months. And this idea is from a book called Getting Things Done by David Allen, a good book I've absolutely loved. And he says the purpose should then inform all these levels all the way down to the runway, which is what's my next action. And so if we can every so often, every few weeks, every few months, reconnect back to what's my purpose, where am I headed for the next 3 to 5 years, what are my goals, and then get down to, okay, then what does that mean for, and we talk about this at Keller Williams as goal setting to the now, or starting with the someday maybe and building it back down to what do I need to do this week in this day. And I think sometimes we do need to reconnect back to our purpose, and then we've got to get into action based on that. So like one of the realizations I had this year was my why, which has to do with relationship for others, means that I want to have a cabin and some land. And I know what I want to use that for, and I know who it could serve. But I realize I've got to go create some excess now. So whenever I teach my agents to budget or to build, fund their life, I say, if you're only making enough money to barely pay your bills, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you don't have any extra to give anywhere. You don't have any extra to enjoy with others. You don't have any extra to invest. So our excess is for living, for giving, and for investing. And if we want to enjoy some of those things, if we want to travel like some of those people you see on Instagram, or if you want to give to people and have an incredible impact and do some amazing stuff with charity, or if you want to invest and have a future, it comes from the excess. So there's 2 ways you can create excess, right? The first is you dial back what you're spending every month and you say, I'm going to live on less, which there's only so far you can go. Or you say, how do I create more revenue? How do I get more coming in? And guess what? We're in an industry that doesn't limit you. There's no like, okay, this is all that you can make is $50,000 a year. You're never making more. No, there's an unlimited amount of opportunity. And so as we pare back down and we figure out what our 3 to 5 year vision is, or what our goals are, that are informed by our purpose, informed by that big why, then we get down and say like, okay, now I know that I need to increase my sales because I want a little bit extra, because I know what I'm going to spend it on. I know how I'm going to allocate that money. And then that should inform us to then say, okay, am I willing to take some uncomfortable action? Am I willing to do some things that are uncomfortable in time bounds that I'm willing to put on them, right? So that it's not taking over my life. It's not hurting the rest of my purpose. Maybe I've got these other commitments. I've got to still balance the commitments I've got. Like I've got 3 kids and 1 on the way. I'm 5, 3, 1, and 0, right? So like it's a busy life at my house. Like I'm working for my house right now. There's screaming and crazy going on out there. Like I was just playing with my kids a few minutes ago. So there's a balance that you have to strike around relationships, certainly. But then if you know, hey, if I make 10 calls today, if I have 10 2-minute conversations with Sphere or with leads, then I'm on track to be able to fund the cabin and the land. That's awesome, right? And so I think we also have to not forget or not disconnect the purpose from what we do daily. It's easy to have a purpose and then to never roll it back into, and how is it going to affect my choices around the minutes I use today? And sometimes those choices are, I'm going to set up my office at home and I'm going to deal with some crazy crying so I can see my kids. And also some of that is I'm going to open up my CRM and I'm going to make calls I don't want to make because I know it's going to fund the thing and I can see it, right? Maybe I've got an actual picture of it next to my desk, or maybe I just remember it daily. Like this is the thing that my wife reminded me of it last night. I said, well, I need to do some extra work because I need to sell a couple extra houses. And she's like, whatever it takes to have a cabin with land. Like that's her, she's got the vision and she's reminding me of it. So that's my next thought is and probably my final thought is when you when you roll back that vision, remember that in order to fund the purpose, to fund the 3-year vision, to fund the goals, you have to have excess. You cannot just say, I'm going to live paycheck to paycheck and then hope that those things come to fruition. Your excitement for life, your opportunity to give, and your opportunity to invest comes from having extra. And you either need to have the discipline to have your expenses less than what you make, or you need to go create some extra money and not go spend it all.
Powerful, powerful, powerful all day. And I think that for this audience here, we already know that it takes that little bit of extra in order sometimes to make such a huge difference. And I love the fact that as I look here, I know there's so many stories that I know. Gabrielle, I know her story. I know what she's doing, up in the Bonham area. My buddy Steve, I know his story. I know Christy out in Arizona. Her and David, they're killing it, right? And again, I think that growth, you and I both know, we all know that growth is I think, expanded in the uncomfortableness, right? We've got to sometimes get in that uncomfortable space in order to really see some growth. And I think for most of us, 2024 is about being a little more uncomfortable than we've been in the past. And I know it is for me, because I've had to add 2 or 3 pillars to what I'm already doing in order to get a different level of success, so that I can fund that cabin. For you, it's the cabin. For me, it's the urban condo in downtown Dallas, right?
Yep.
That's my thing. So we all have one thing. Find out what it is, and I think that'll help move you in the direction that you want to go.
I love that. I love that. Final piece of advice, which is probably not the most impactful piece of advice, but it was something I was thinking about this morning. We often say when we're talking about connecting with leads or connecting with other people, that people do business with people that they know, like, and trust. And I got to thinking about that. That's true. Like, our sphere, the reason they choose to use us is because they know we're in real estate, they like us, they know us, and they trust that we're good at advising them on those things. And so it's important to keep that in mind when you're wondering, like, where am I at with referrals for the year? Where am I at with people? The know, like, and trust is either from the people that have been hearing from you or consistently receiving messages about real estate from you, or people that have transferred that trust to their sphere referrals, right? And that's why sphere referrals are generally so easy, because someone that trusted you, liked you, knew you, just transfer that information. So if you're working leads that aren't coming from your sphere referral, just remember you've got a little bit of a higher barrier because you don't have the longevity of relationship that they already know, like, and trust you. But the cold business, the business you get from other, or warm business, the business you get from non-sphere sources, is just as important to know, like, and trust you. And so then your job is to say, how do I get into better rapport with them? How do I build those relationships in a way that I can build, know, like, and trust with those people as well? And I was just thinking this morning, I told my team, and this is why I brought it back up to you guys, is, there's the language of agreement that's coming out right now. I think they start next week. And I'm like, I think we need to get in language agreement, because we need to be better at the language. That's our skill that we can grow in, to get know, like, and trust from people that don't already have it automatically, or haven't been spending time or going to events or seeing us at church every Sunday for the last 2 or 3 years. Like, those people, it's a little bit easier because it just happens by default. But with people that we don't know immediately, or we're getting from sources that we have to build rapport, and we have to sharpen those skills again, because it takes a little bit more skill to get know, like, and trust from people that don't know you yet. So that's my final, maybe less impactful thought that I have for today.